Thank you, Hillary, for the introduction. I appreciate it. I am not Jeff Wong. People frequently mistake me for being Jeff Wong. The only thing that separates us is Jeff Wong has a full head of hair. So that is a remarkable similarity. Oh, I'm sorry. How's that? Can you hear me now? Perfect. I like to say I've just been incredibly impressed with the caliber of the experts who have come here today to share all of their wealth of expertise and information. Just outstanding speakers. Many of you, cleared your busy schedules, traveled hundreds, if not thousands of miles to be here, and gave very freely of your time. So for that, we really appreciate that. And I hope everybody here today, and for those of you participating on the web, will take all the information and expertise and suggestions that you've gathered and take it back to your place of business or place of research and use it fully. I believe that the format and the agenda of today's symposium was I think, really successful, starting with the introductory comments from our director, Maziar Mofasagi, Dr. Andre Nell from CEIN, that both spoke to the promise and potential of this technology. Truly remarkable. And also shared their vision for how we can continue to grow this technology. We moved on to Dr. Schulte, who shared with us a very comprehensive view of the ongoing NIOSH nanotechnology program, and also spoke to some of the key elements of worker protection, hazard identification, exposure assessment. I like the one statement you had in your presentation that really jumped out at me, that being it's oftentimes the workers of the world that are the ones that are first exposed to these new technologies. And because of their newness, we don't fully understand all the ramifications. And there's clearly data gaps associated with these people being exposed to these new technologies, whether it's the need for occupational exposure limits, validated analytical methods, instrumentation, toxicity screening, you name it. And you'll see that there's a theme here. How do we go about filling those data gaps? It's going to take a collaborative effort. So I found your presentation quite interesting. Dr. Methner from NIOSH with the Nano field research team. Fascinating. Gave very graphic illustrations of the effectiveness of control methodologies, whether that's an engineering control, a work practice, personal protective equipment. I really liked your focus on sharing with us some of the techniques that are actually functioning. I think there's a tendency from a lot of people in this field, and it was borne out perhaps in some of the survey results from the UCSB, to say, we don't know, therefore we can't act. But I found like your expose on the fact that we're using local exhaust and modifying a flange to increase capture velocity. I mean, that was very functional. Simple fix, right? The use of commonly available welding fume extractors, again, very functional. An easy fix. Well, perhaps not easy. I really liked your discussion about future work needs. You called out specifically occupational exposure limits, the need for additional exposure assessments, the need for validated analytical test methods, things of that nature. I think that speaks volumes to your firsthand experience in going out and doing these assessments. So I think when you say these things, I think people should sit up and take notice because you're actually out there doing the work. But I think it also speaks to the need for collaboration, because how do we go about filling those data gaps? How do we go about answering those very important questions? And I think that's a theme that you've seen played out time and time again today. Data gaps. How do we go about filling those data gaps? Dr. David from BASF shared with us the Nano Code of Conduct and talked about how BASF deals with unknowns. I really liked your statement, self-commitment in the absence of regulation. I'm wondering if I can use that with my teenagers when I'm not around. Maybe they'll listen to me, I'm not sure. But I think that demonstrates good business practice and good corporate stewardship and goes beyond like the bare minimum syndrome. Lots of people out in the regulated community, you'll hear them all the time, well, I'm going to comply with OSHA regulations. And that's fantastic, and OSHA regulations are very important. But oftentimes those are the bare minimum requirements. And in your case, we're not even dealing with a regulation as of yet. That your company has chosen to go above and beyond that and be proactive. So I think that speaks volumes. Looking in your code of conduct, I actually read that. And I thought there was a very telling statement towards the end of that code of conduct. Nanotechnology will only be successful if society trusts it and accepts it. And I think that's a very powerful message for everybody here today. Very important. Kevin Maloney and Brendan McKinney, unfortunately they had to leave to sit in traffic, but I found their presentation really interesting and refreshing. They shared with us a vision of zero injuries, incidents, accidents, zero environmental harm. Those are all very noble goals. I thought what was really important about their presentation for those people here and also on the web was the fact that they stressed collaboration and transparency. They weren't afraid to go outside and bring in external experts, in this case NIOSH, to share with them perhaps better approaches for controlling ENP exposure in the workplace. They also were trying to leverage some of their EH&S experience potentially into a new business area. And why not? Because what we've seen in some of our company visits going throughout California working with the call-in efforts is that EH&S practices are all over the map. Everywhere from supplied air to using filtering face pieces to using nothing to have your cup of coffee standing next to an open vat of CNTs. So it's all over the map. I was a little disturbed with some of the photos. They showed a number of bald IHs there, so I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe there's some sort of nano-induced alopecia. Maybe we should look into that a little bit, perhaps. I don't know. Larry Gibbs, is Larry still here? I know he was injured. Did he? Okay. Medical center? No. He had a very fascinating presentation. He talked. What I found really interesting was the depth and breadth of research ongoing at Stanford. 33 faculty members involved in active nano research protocols. He had some interesting statistics, I think, that are both positive and negative. The first one I'm going to reference was his discussion about nano centers, metropolitan areas, and he said the top 6 nano centers within the country, 3 of which were located in California: Oakland, San Jose, and San Francisco. So that again speaks volumes to the importance of this technology to our economy. But he has some very negative statistics, citing 25% of some of these nano researchers use no lab safety protocols whatsoever. I found that to be very disturbing. 30% use no PPE. Again, very unfortunate statistics. So he did speak a little bit about the ENP Lab Safety Protocol that Stanford has stepped up and is chairing. And again, it's a collaborative effort. Collaboration, again, you'll see this theme between NIOSH and DTSC and several of the leading academic institutions in California. Very important. Very difficult job, though. It's analogous to herding cats. We've talked about that. So maybe we'll have to call him the cat whisperer or something from now on. I don't know. It's a very difficult task, but we're moving forward on that. Dr. Holden from UCSB had an interesting presentation in that she shared with us some information about some ecotoxicity developments, quite disturbing about the phytoplankton and growth rates. But I really found interesting was some of the preliminary survey results that you folks have been working on. Some of the citations were that these corporations believe that they knew better about their own health and safety, and yet somewhat conversely said, well, we don't know enough about it to act on it. I found that quite interesting. And again, it gets back to the point I made earlier. I think there still is this tendency to say we don't know anything, therefore we're not going to act. And we've seen examples of companies here today and entities here today that have chosen to act proactively. So I found that very interesting. Dr. Godwin, your presentation I found to be very intriguing. Your emphasis on a registry, I found that very interesting. I believe Dr. Schulte shared that with us also. Data gaps, again, exist throughout the process, whether it's packaging or processing or what have you, and we need to fill those data gaps quite clearly. And DTSC in its own capacity is attempting to do that via the call-in process. Tim Malloy, you think it was difficult being the last speaker. How about trying to follow you? That was it's a real challenge. But the legal ramifications, very interesting. Your discussion about tort, the uncertainties with tort, the fact that traditional regulatory structure may not have the impact in perhaps channeling people in a positive way in dealing with nanotechnology, EH&S issues. And then we kind of came full circle. We came back to your discussion about the Green Chemistry Initiative and the draft regulations out there. And you mentioned the benign by design, which our director mentioned from the very onset this morning as being potentially a mechanism. So very interesting. I wanted to shift emphasis for just a second before I finish with just a closing thought. Thank yous. I know people throughout the day have thanked people, but I would be remiss if I didn't say some hearty thank yous, because putting on one of these events is a tremendous amount of effort, and DTSC did not bear the brunt of that. It was UCLA. But thank you to our director, Maziar Movasai, and our chief scientist, Jeff Wong, for providing the impetus and the leadership to keep the Nanotechnology Symposia series going and spearhead the call-in efforts and all the nanotechnology efforts underway. So we thank you for that. Amazing co-sponsors, absolutely phenomenal. UCLA, UCLA CNSI, CEIN, Dr. Andre Nell, Dr. Hillary Godwin, just fantastic work and amazing partners. Some folks I need to thank also, David Avery, who is the Chief Administrative Officer for CEN, could not be here today, which is unfortunate because some people on the team thought he bore an uncanny resemblance to Brad Pitt. So, but he's not here. That's the truth. That statement was made. Katie Namath, who is back in the booth, thank you very much. Amazing work. She's the Education and Outreach Director. Phenomenal work. The UCLA Luskin Center and Teresa Lara for her outreach efforts and press. The Southern California ERC for securing all those maintenance points. So for the CIHs, CSPs, REHS folks, make sure you take advantage of those. From the DTSC side, Charlotte Tadipe in our outreach and press, fantastic efforts. David Grealish, who is not here but is responsible for these fantastic posters that you've seen throughout the atrium and up here. Amazing work. Shannon Foss, who did our web design, Yolanda Garza, who helped us wade through the invoicing and budget morass of the state government, and the one and only Bill Ryan, who my partner in crime. Thank you very much. Amazing efforts, and I'm honored to call you a friend as well, so I thank you for that. Final thought, I promise, I'll let you go. You've heard from experts here today throughout that a number of data gaps exist, okay, time and time again. Again, it could be from fate and transport, from further toxicity screening, analytical methods, instrumentation, you name it. It's really going to take a collaborative effort to answer those and fill in those data gaps. Academia, professional organizations like the AIHA, ASSE, NIOSH, OSHA, EPA, you name it, private industry, we all have to remain actively engaged in this. So it's really going to take collaboration and partnerships. So I suggest we act on that, and I think to that end there's a light reception out in the atrium, so I suggest that we go out there, talk amongst ourselves, and continue to build those partnerships. And with that, I thank you very much.